Hi, I'm Dr. Sadhna Bokhiria, and this is LeaderVoices, a show about leaders and their infinite ability to change the world. Each episode in LeaderVoices, we dig into stories and sparks from for-purpose leaders, coaches, comedians, luminaries, and everyday heroes from around the globe. Tales of impact and failing forward, of aspirations and innovations, and the infinite and inspiring ways that social purpose leaders lead and make the world a better place. Join us today as we introduce a new guest. It is my great pleasure to introduce Jamie Riley to LeaderVoices today. He has been in the pharmaceutical recruitment industry for nearly 2 decades with experience essentially globally. You started in 2005 launching your company, which is called Pharma Search Partners. And I know you were in the industry even before then. And what I'm super excited to talk to you about is essentially your experience, because I feel like the 2000s are a completely different time and life than they are now. And so super excited to introduce you to our audience. You've been at the forefront of connecting top-tier talent with leading biotechnology and pharmaceutical companies. And your expertise is really unique in that you're in a space where you're dealing with recruiting scientists. And then you're also in a space where you're recruiting people in medical affairs, regulatory affairs, compliance, commercial, and C-suite, of course. So super excited to learn about your leadership, learn about how the industry has changed over the span of your career, understand how you got into the entrepreneurial game by basically launching your company, and also understanding how your teams are operating, because I know that you are in UK, India, and Singapore. So you're worldwide. So pleasure to have you on the show, Jamie. Thank you for joining us on LeaderVoices, and welcome.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure. So we met, and when I was looking at your experience, I was excited because I thought to myself, well, how much has the recruitment industry evolved since you launched your company in 2005? So tell me a little bit about how you got into the space, what was your interest, and what's changed since you launched?
Oh, wow. I actually got into this business in 2000 by accident. I had just retired from the military. I'd been retired a couple of years, and I was a single dad. I needed to find a job where I wasn't working shifts and I could be home for the kids, daughter in college, all that stuff. And I walked into this agency. They had a warehouse foreman's job. And I thought, well, if I can run a command, I can run a warehouse, right? So he said, well, your last command that you managed was a recruiting command. How about if I teach you to be a civilian recruiter and you work for me? Okay. I'm game. That's how I got in it. And I did not know anything. I mean, I'd gone from being a United States Marine to a civilian, knew nothing. Didn't know the difference between a chemist and a advertiser, So I got into it, and I placed my first scientist, who was a chemist, analytical chemist, went down to the lab to actually see, what are you touching and doing? And it was so cool to see the lab, to see, and it just got me. So I dove headfirst into learning my product and made it a point that if I placed, say, a chemist or a formulator or a pharmacologist, whatever, I went to visit these people. I want to see what you do. I want to touch it, feel it, smell it, hear it. Because if you don't know your product, how can you service your industry? And I got into it, worked in an agency 5 years, raised my kids, and said, I want to do it my way. I didn't believe in the model of recruiting back then, because to me, it was about the deal. It was about how many can you close without caring about the candidate and the client.
Yeah.
I didn't like that. I didn't like that perception of the ruling back then was 3 jobs for every candidate, 3 candidates for every job. So if you were a hiring manager and you gave me 3 jobs, I got to find you 12 resumes, but I don't care what it impacts on these people. I didn't like that. because I went through that when I retired from the Marine Corps.
Right.
So I started my own agency where I focus on essentially taking care of the candidate and taking care of the client and doing what's right.
Right.
And if it's not right for the candidate, then I'm going to tell them so.
Right.
And if it's not right for the client, I'm going to tell them so. And been doing it now, be 25 years this year.
Incredible. So in terms of the difficulty, I mean, finding great talent is what makes companies successful. Having the right people in the right seats with the right skills is critical to no matter what your industry, no matter what it is that you do, it's critical you have the right people on your team. And from 2000 till now, it's changed drastically. Do you feel that with Gen Z and different type of, controversies with regard to work ethic and today's workforce, that the workforce is better? Or do you feel like civilization is just going downhill in terms of work ethic and people really wanting to
I don't know. That's a good term. Yeah. The evolution of workers has changed, and it is drastic. I actually had a conversation with one of my C-level people, one of my hiring managers the other day about this. 20 years ago, you were probably in junior high school. 20 years ago, believe it or not, we were still submitting candidates via fax machines. That's no lie. But it was about the job. It was about economics. It was about taking care of family. It was, if I was calling you on a role and it wasn't right for you, we had that conversation. You didn't have all this social polarization and, what's due me and I demand this. You didn't have that.
Right.
I have seen that progression in the industry. And I would say it's worst now because of COVID, because of this, working from home thing.
Right.
But it got to the point of where automation has become, I think, a detriment. It used to be a hiring manager. And I just wrote an article in Pharma Now about this. And it used to be, if you were my hiring manager and I sent you a resume on a candidate for whatever role, and they had their skill sets listed. Well, this person has this skill set. You would think to yourself, I would think they would have this also. So let me ask and clarify and confirm. That's how it used to be. Today, nope. Oh, I don't see it on paper. Doesn't exist.
Huh.
Yeah. And it's horrible. And then you can't, when that happens, you can't fight that battle because they're not going to hear it. So there's no thinking out of the box per se, okay? If you were hiring a sound engineer for what you do and they had certain softwares, you would think, oh, well, yeah, maybe they've got this. Let me ask. They don't do that these days.
So you're saying if I'm a candidate and I have a resume and I essentially submit it for review to one of the companies, it's critical that I list exactly every single skill that I have, because if it's not written in that format, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. And my guidance to candidates, I'm actually launching another company to help the everyday people with this very factor, is you cannot use the same resume for every job. I may be looking for a chemist with HPLC experience, and then this other guy's looking for a chemist with UV-Vis experience. But if those acronyms aren't on there, you're not going to make it through the HR screening process or the AI, which is a huge mistake, the screening process, and you're not going to get interviewed. So you got to tailor, telling and being honest, tailor your resume to the job and submit a brief cover letter of why you fit.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Wouldn't make sense to me to have a stock submission, because each company is going to be heavily focused on different needs, which are, according to what their gaps are. So, I mean, that makes sense to me. What about essentially just the difference in the applicants and their requests, their desire for their compensation package? I look at it as many, years ago, it was more so, the salary is very, very important. And post COVID, there's obviously more of an emphasis on work-life balance and also saying, okay, maybe I don't need this X number for my salary, but I do want to make sure that I have the ability to work from home 50% of the time. So what are you seeing in terms of reasonable and unreasonable requests from candidates in terms of changing the game of negotiation compared to what it was in 2000, even 2008? I mean, it's
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
fast.
In the last 6 years, I've seen this shift. Quality of life issues have always been an issue. Now, 20 years ago, we'll talk about New Jersey, for instance. It was not unusual 20 years ago for somebody to drive one way an hour and a half to go to work.
Yeah.
Because of their skill sets, but they couldn't relocate or they didn't want to relocate. That was normal. Today, not so much, right? Which makes sense. But starting about 5-6 years ago, I've had people that I would put at a company, and then 9 months later, they left the company because they found another job that paid 10 cents more that was 5 miles closer to their house.
Huh.
Or I actually had someone call me. They left the company after about a year and a half. And I said, why'd you leave? You were doing great. I didn't like the aura of the team.
What did you say?
You're not paid to like the aura of the team. You're paid to do a job. I don't get like me pay, right? If I'm working for you, you're not paying me to like you. You're paying me to do a job. And we got to learn each other. Yeah, it's nuts. Now, during COVID was interesting because a lot of companies got smart. And some of these companies I've been pushing for years. There are certain jobs in pharma and biotech that don't need to be in a cube punching keys.
Right.
Right. I mean, let them work from home. Plus,
across industries. Totally.
Yeah. And you save on your overhead. And I've been preaching this for years. Well, COVID hit, it happens. And my clients come back, oh man, you know what? We left these people remote after COVID and production went up. Duh. Yeah. I've been telling you that. And in talking to the candidates, you know what they said? Why they're more productive at home? Because they don't have people stopping by their cube wanting to talk about football.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or how do you fix spaghetti? It's not happening. So that transition now, where it's gotten ludicrous is there are certain jobs in whatever industry that you have to be in the manufacturing plant or you have to be in the lab, right? There are people out there that believe they can still do that job remote, and there's no way. If you're in quality control, that's a good general topic that all industry has, right? If you're in quality control, how are you going to do quality control of a pharmaceutical compound from home? You can't.
Yeah.
So it's gotten ludicrous. The bad thing to that is because of new innovations like AI, machine learning, and decision science, it's going to generate a gap between the candidate and the client that's going to take a while to get over. Yeah, it's interesting.
It really is because, like, to your point, if you're in a position where you physically need to evaluate something that you need to do physically, as in touch it, see it, feel it, to make sure that it's compliant, it requires you to be there, right? We have this comic, it's a sheep herder, and he's on Zoom and he's talking to a sheep and he says, I'm working from home today. Right? Like, you can't herd the sheep from your computer, right? Like, you have to be
right. Yeah.
So the concept is people want work-life balance. If you're in a position where, let's say you're facilitating a clinical trial, you need to be in person. When we're talking about other roles, though, in terms of roles where you are not, in my company, for instance, my market research team, my operations team, they're not essentially industry forward. They're not interacting with clients. They're building intelligence. They're doing dense academic research, which for me, I want them to do when they're at their best, which means they need to have their own schedules. So what we did is we said, when I launched my company, I asked, like, what is your ideal company? What is your dream workplace, right? And what does it look like? And this is what they said. They wanted unlimited PTO. They wanted the ability to work from anywhere. They were very clear, like, we want unlimited PTO. We want to be 100% remote. And that means that if I want to go to Italy and work from Italy for a month, I will work, right? But I'm going to do it from Italy. I'm not going to be in my house required to work from my home, because that's something that I guess a lot of companies were saying, like, we don't want you to like be traveling. So they're 100% remote. They have unlimited PTO. They can work from anywhere in the world. And they're autonomous, they're respected, they're trusted, they're not micromanaged. And the whole thing is they're happy and they do the work because they have to get it done. It's not about like clocking in and clocking out. So here's my thing. I am looking for people who are intrinsically neurotic, right? They're the ones who are hard on themselves. Like, they wake up in the morning and they're like, crap, I got to do this, right? And I'm not looking for people who need someone to be like, hey, where's this? What's this? Where's this? Micromanaging. So how do I find people who are inherently neurotic?
Yeah, they're out there. And kudos to you. That's how I run my team. I can work from anywhere. I've done conference calls off of cruise ships. I've been in South Africa closing deals. I've been in Montana closing deals. As long as I'm doing my business and my people doing their business, we're good. And they'll call me and say, "Hey, we've got a celebration coming up. I'm not going to work Thursday and Friday." Cool.
Sure.
Just get your stuff done. And I am not one for reports. My old ex-boss at the agency had time reports, call reports, email reports, analytics. No, I have a whiteboard. Yeah, I have a whiteboard right behind my monitors, and my recruiters, that's what they do. They recruit. And on that whiteboard, I don't track statistics. If I see in a few days I'm not hearing something, I'm calling them up, say, "Hey, dude, what's going on? I can't find anybody. Why can't you find anybody?" And I'll make a note, so-and-so's having a problem with this, so that it reminds me, because, I do 40, 50 calls a day.
Right.
And I don't measure them from a performance or calls or whatever. Bottom line is, if we're not closing deals, if we're not taking care of candidates, we're not taking care of clients, and you're not providing what I am hiring you to provide, then we got a problem.
Right. Right.
And I'm either going to train, but from owning a business, you can only lead a horse to water so many times to where it ain't worth leading them no more.
Right. Yeah.
So that I agree with you.
Yeah, it's challenging because it's a time investment, right? So it's like, we use this, it's EOS, and we basically say, do they get it? Do they want it? And do they have the skill sets? And so if they get it and they want it, that's great. But if they don't have the capability to execute, you can't really do much there, right? If they have the skill set and the capability, but they don't want it, you know what I mean? It's a different type of issue. So it's like three things. Do they get it? Do they want it? And can they do it because they have the skill set? I think, this is my hypothesis, that with AI, with just the evolution of technology, people are getting so much better at interviewing. Maybe they do a mock interview with AI. They're able to use AI to create stunning cover letters and resumes that really get people's attention. they're better at selling themselves because we live in a time where everyone's promoting themselves on social media in some capacity. So I think it's more rooted in our culture to promote, where I think, in the 2000s, it's like you go into an interview and you want to show that you're talented and you're highly skilled, but you don't want to be arrogant, right? You don't want to sound like you're not humble. How do you circumvent this issue where it's like you'll have someone come in and they just crush the interview and you're excited about them, and then they get into the job and they just suck, and you're like, wow, your job could be a professional interviewer, like you're great at interviewing.
Are you talking about somebody that's working for me or somebody working for a client?
I think
that's
both.
Two different animals.
Yeah, tell me both. I mean, tell me from your perspective as the president and CEO of your company. How do you handle that?
Well, people that I use working for me, I go into interviewing them and working with them from the perspective, there's no way they have as much experience as I do. If they did, they'd own a company. Right. Now, I'm not this genius. I'm self-taught in drug development, drug discovery, pharmacology, toxicology, pharmacometrics, because I read publications and I love what I do. So I'm a different animal. All right. Yeah. I don't expect that person to have those skill sets. What my expectations are is let me teach you. And after I have tried teaching you so much, if you're not a sponge and absorbing it, then we got to look at separation. Okay. For my clients, I take the same view because I don't consider myself a vendor. I'm a partner. So if I'm interviewing somebody for a job and I get, the hair on the back of my neck stands up, says, this dude ain't got it, even though they speak well, my client will never see them. And if they get into the job because they got through me and I don't have any apprehensions, but the truth comes out and HR calls me and says, hey, this dude's crap.
Yeah.
I replace him.
Yeah. It must be very hard to find the right people. How has that evolved, especially on the global front? Because you're in Singapore, India, et cetera. So how is the experience different when you have candidates from different backgrounds?
Well, that goes back to the product knowledge. You got to know what you're doing. I mean, if you work somewhere else until today and then launched a podcast company, an advertising company, you can't jump into it and like, I'm the greatest thing in the world. That ain't going to work. You got to know your product. And what I found about people, and I can't even count how many people I've interacted with in 20 years. It's funny how people that try to put a misleading front forward can't do it repetitively. So if I'm asking you questions today and say, you know what, I need to clarify something. Let me call you next week. Let's talk again. And I ask those same questions and the answers change. Something's off because I'm not a very educated man, self-taught. If you're a pharmacologist and I'm talking to you about doing nonlinear modeling, I'm going to ask you, hey, you've got this publication on PubMed here. Can you show that to me and explain it to me? One, you're going to be able to talk like you know what you're talking about. Two, I'm learning.
It's a win.
So I want to dive into your world. And I've found with people, the deeper you dive, you find the truth. One analogy that I used to use, I won't say lecture, talk, local universities, interviewing and making a job change. Interviewing is like dating. You're going to drink a lot of bad coffee, have a lot of bad meals, and some rotten phone calls before you find the right one.
It's true.
It's true. It is. But it's a matter of conversation. One of the things that I think is lacking today is the ability to have a conversation lucidly and intellectually. People talk too fast and they want to get in and get out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see it all the time.
So let me ask you from like a vetting perspective. when you're vetting candidates, so you mentioned like PubMed and looking at their publications and being able to talk to them about their research, et cetera. What are some ways other than like your traditional background check where you can kind of X out people by vetting them in advance? Like, are you doing like a social media sweep?
No, and I think there's a fallacy to that. First off, I think what you have on your social media, that's you, that's your private thing. To hold that against you is, I think, socially incorrect. Now, if you're some wacko, and you're doing some really, really off the wall stuff. Yeah. But no, I don't do that because I'm a pretty good judge of character. I'm a pretty good judge of people. And I might look if I get that hint, there's something off. I might look, but no. And the other thing not to use against people is their LinkedIn page. I've had clients say the resume says this, but their LinkedIn page doesn't say that. So
Yeah.
You can't have your LinkedIn page saying everything you ever done. There's no way.
Yeah.
I mean, my 20 some years in the Marine Corps would fill up a book.
Right.
So social media, I think, is unjustly used. But if I think there's something a little off, I might check it. And if it's really off, I'm not going to say nothing to the candidate. I'm not going to say nothing to the client, but I'm going to find a way to get rid of them.
Yeah.
Sweep it under the rug. Nobody needs to know because that's your business.
Right. I see what you're saying.
I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt my client.
So here's what I do. I'm curious to see what you think about this. So I have a rule in my company where we will not hire anybody who's posted a negative Yelp review for a restaurant or for, I'm curious to see what you think about this because here's my logic. Okay. If someone has a Yelp account or like Google reviews, whatever it is, and they're going around leaving restaurants like 1 star and they have like this paragraph of we walked in and we were not greeted within 30 seconds and the bread was cold. I would not go here in caps ever. I am like, I don't want anything to do with this person because clearly they're not civilized, right? Like there's no other word for that. That is not civilized because
point.
And then what could they do to your company, right? Because they're definitely comfortable complaining publicly.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Look at me.
Yeah, I see those reviews. I'm like, dude, you don't have anything else to do? Exactly. I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly. I've never actually had like a bunch of people who had like these, but I like to share that because I think many times people don't realize that when you go online and you post something, it does create a paper trail. And you have to know that that paper trail becomes part of your online identity and it will inevitably be used to kind of create an assessment of you, whether it's good or whether it's bad. It's data, right? They're data points that people can use to say, hey, that's a little bit odd. But yeah, that's like one of the things that I always wonder. And I have a 10-year-old son, you're a dad too. So it's like you try to teach your children how important it is to be like cognizant of what they're putting out there as a representation of themselves.
Exactly. And I have had conversations with candidates and offered advice from the perspective of, I don't think you're a fit for this job, and here's why. And if they agree, and then I'll say, by the way, you might want to take a look what you put here, because there are people that look at that, and that's going to impact on your future. Now, I'm not intruding on your personal rights. I'm not intruding on your beliefs. I'm advising you as a professional recruiter. You might want to look at some stuff, dude, because,
Yeah, that makes sense. That's kind, to kind of say, hey, maybe take a look at this. So there's also this contrast between, hey, I need someone fast. I want to fill this job as quickly as possible. I need them fast, but I also don't want someone who's not a good fit. timeline wise, how do you circumvent the need to fill the position, of course, but then also make sure that you're not, putting in the wrong person?
That's my forte.
Interesting.
I love it. I love being challenged. It's easy. Well, not easy, but I make it easy.
Hmm.
We have a conversation what you need. You tell me you need it now. Now, needing it now means that from the time we speak to the time you have this person on deck, it may be a month because you got an interview process, background checks. Okay. So as soon as we get off the phone, I circle my team. Hey, just got off the phone with Sadhna. She needs this biostatistician right now. Here's what I want. I don't give them this 3-paragraph job description because I'm supposed to be the expert. Here's what she wants: A, B, C, D, E. Go find them. If they don't have these, I don't want to see them. They find them, bring them to me. Then I clarify and confirm that. I also go to schedule with the candidate. Look, this is critical. I send you to her. She interviews, you get hired. You're going to work within a month to 6 weeks. This is moving. It's got legs, dude. Be ready to hold on. That's how I do it. And I do it all the time. And I love it when it's like that.
It's great. And in our industry, what's fascinating is it's extremely volatile. So you'll see 40 people from one company completely get dissolved, right? And then all 40 people will move fast to a different company. So I feel like in our industry, just because it's so volatile, you'll see large departments, large groups of people looking for work immediately, or it'll be, unfortunately, like a negative efficacy result on like a phase 2, phase 3 trial, and they are no longer doing their launch. And so they have to completely re-strategize. And then those people end up, looking. So I can see that being timely.
And in those cases, like you're mentioning, a phase 3 trial fails, layoffs. Last year, there were 182 pharmaceutical and biotech companies that did layoffs. Well, with those, there's a calendar. All right, we're going to let you go. We need you here another month to transfer your data, and we're going to give you a severance. These people are going to hold out for the severance. That severance is 6 months worth of pay.
Right, right.
And if you're skilled for what my client needs, I'm going to talk to my client about it. If you want this person now, you need to go ahead and pay that severance as a sign-on bonus. And when that happens, it's a sad thing because there's some really, really good people that are affected by that. Interestingly enough, it's very rarely the higher levels. It's all the grunts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's challenging. I wonder, what advice do you have for people looking to get into the pharmaceutical biotechnology world, maybe younger people? The reason why I direct it towards younger people is because in my experience, I've found that the interviews that I've had with people straight out of university, their understanding of the workplace is so different in terms of what they learned in the classroom and what's like really happening. So any advice for new people just coming straight out of school, trying to get into the industry?
Yeah. Realize that interviewing how to get a job is not taught at a university. So if somebody says, we're going to do this thing and tell you how to interview, scratch it. Take the basics, scratch it. Number 2, you're going to fail. Okay? It's going to fail. You're going to get told no. Get over it. All right? Nobody owes you anything.
That's good.
And get over it. The other thing is you can't wait till graduation day. You can't walk across that stage and say, here I am with my degree and you owe me 6 figures and I want a job. Ain't happening. You're going to be doing something else in retail somewhere. Okay? You start 2 years before. And I'm actually launching a company that's going to be guiding these people. You start 2 years before with doing internships. Go to your parents. Who do they know that does what you're getting a degree in that you like or you have an interest in? Spend a day with them. Internships may be free or paid, right? Here's an example. There's a young lady, she is in packaging. My guidance to her was go do some internships. She goes, oh, I don't get paid. Get over it. It's a week.
Yeah.
Your dad and mom will write you a check. You'll be fine. Go.
Yeah.
She did an internship. The next summer got a paid internship with the same company. And guess who she's working for now?
Yeah.
See, you start early and you got to be open and be real with yourself. Are you good at what you do? Hopefully so.
Right.
Project that, but don't do it from a standpoint of being arrogant and that anybody owes you anything, because they don't.
Yeah, it's great advice. It resonates with me because I do notice this entitlement. And I think when you emphasize nobody owes you anything, like you have to get your foot in the door and you have to do what you have to do to basically make sure that you're seen. And some of that might mean doing an internship that you're not thrilled about, the compensation, but think long term. Think about how this is going to impact you in, 2 years, maybe not 2 months.
Exactly. And if you got a company you want to work for, and I guide people all the time, you got a specific company you want to work for, then maybe the summer between your first year, take whatever job they got. They need somebody to cut the grass, go cut the grass.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Get to know people. Talk to the lady or the guy in HR while you're cutting the grass. Let them know what you're doing and get them to know you so that at the end of your degree, not only do they know your work ethic, they know your intelligence, they know you have an interest in the company. Guess what? You're probably going to get a job.
Right. Yeah, it's brilliant advice. And it's so important for people to hear what you are saying. Stop not interacting with humans, because that's the other thing I notice. It's like, I will call someone for, an interview and they'll email me back. And I'm like, I want to talk to you. You know what I mean?
Hello.
Hi, how are you? I noticed you applied for this job. Looks like you have a great background. And they'll email me back because they don't want to talk or like text instead of like answering the phone. So it's like, okay, why not just like take a minute? But it's a generational thing.
Yes. Yeah, it is. And there are some incredibly intelligent younger folks out there that their parents or someone I worked with, and they'll say, hey, would you help my kid? Sure. And it is generational because the presentation aspects, the work ethic, things that my era knew that it's lost over the last few years. And there have been family members, nephews, nieces, some of my own grandkids, that I've said, don't do that. Why? They'll go like, why? Like, why? Because it's irritating.
That's great advice.
And talk to me, not at me.
Right.
Talk with me. Have an intellectual conversation. And they've come back saying, gosh, you were right.
Yeah.
So you're 100% correct. Let's have a communication like adults.
Right.
And be honest with each other, what we don't know, what we do know, and come to a conclusion of whether it's going to work for both parties.
Right. Right. Yeah. Really, really important, timely advice to just, really focus on the bottom line. And that is, understanding your network, understand that getting in and interacting with people who will ultimately be influencers in your role or your hiring process. It just seems so simple, right? And obvious compared to the alternative, which I see is they're working harder, not smarter. So they're online, like, oh, how do I connect with, and like doing it in this disconnected, fragmented approach when just getting in front of a human being can be so powerful. That really does resonate with me. And I really hope a lot of people will kind of take that.
They need to do that and stop doing,
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
over it. Have a talk.
So you said that you're launching another company. Tell me everything. So you're launching another company to really help this dire need and help prepare these candidates, right? Tell me all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. We are launching another company, and it's going to be for anybody. It's not going to be focused on pharmaceutical and biotechnology, drug development, drug discovery. It's going to be, for that young lady that maybe only has community college experience, but wants to progress her life and get a better job. It's going to be for the truck driver. It's going to be for anybody. The basis of it is people don't know how to interview because it's not taught. You learn by failure, right? And you need a coach. And that's what we're going to do. So, and it's going to be me. It's not going to be my guys because they don't have 25 years of doing this. They haven't failed in interviews. I did when I first got out of the Marine Corps because I was a Marine. It's like I'm in your face. A funny story. I had a guy interview me. He came from Atlanta, interview me to run his company. He said, "So what's your future goals?" I said, "I want your job."
Ugh.
Yeah, I didn't get hired.
Like that.
So we're going to guide them through that. We're going to be a coach. And that's me and you having a conversation about who you really are, skill sets, personality, whatever. We're going to get to know each other. And that costs nothing. It's time. All right. And then from there, you're going to tell me what you want to do. Now, if you're not qualified to do what you want to do because you have no practical experience, I'm going to be honest enough to tell you you're not qualified. But if you want to do that, here's the guide point. Here's the direction.
Right.
So as coaching and interviewing tips, job search tips, guiding you from beginning to negotiating an offer.
Great. Right.
And then we're going to do that for anybody that needs it, but they're going to have to be ready for brutal honesty.
Tell me about negotiating an offer.
Favorite subject. Negotiating an offer, when it gets to that point, there are some that say that when you reach that point, the interviewing process is nervous, but negotiating an offer is like getting married again. It is so nerve-wracking, right? The bottom line is this. When you go do a job search, you got to know what you're worth. You got to know what a respectful and honest increase is, and know what the job you're interviewing for pays. All that to say this. The job pays 150, you're making 100. They make you an offer, 1.25, right? First off, my guidance to everybody, never accept the first offer. Never. Always counter offer. So they offer you 125, go back, say, yeah, I'd like 130. They give you that, accept it, shut up, and go to work. But if there are people that come to you and you're making 100 and they know you're making 100 and they said, we'll give you 105, now it's a matter of, are they really seeing my worth?
Right.
And that's the time that you got to decide, do I just walk away or do I counter? I would counter anyway, saying, all right, you offer me 105, I'm making 100. Let's meet in the middle, give me 110, 112, and we're golden. If they're not willing to do that, you really don't want to work there anyway.
Right.
It is tough. What I do for my candidates, maybe it's different, is I know what you're making. I know what you're expecting. I know what my client is offering. And if you're kind of equal, everybody on the same line, I'll tell my people up front, you're going to have to give me XYZ if you want this person.
Right.
So we're going to avoid this back and forth crud. And oh, by the way, Sadhna's got a bonus in March of 30 grand. You want her now, you got to give her that now because she's walking away from it.
Right. And that makes sense.
So that's how I do it. But it is tough negotiating, but don't ever be afraid to negotiate. Never accept the first offer and don't be afraid to walk away.
Hmm. Yeah, it's great advice. It reminds me. So we had a previous guest on this show. Her name's Wendy Rockwell, and she was responsible for the Colorado law that, and this was around 2019 that I think it was passed. But the law prevents companies from using or asking what your previous salary was. And if they post a job, they have to put the range. And so she was fundamental in that legislation. And so I notice now that since that happened, it shifted where there's certain states where there's a requirement that you are not allowed to say, what did you make at your previous position? Because then you're not pigeonholed into this range, right?
Right. New Jersey does that.
Interesting. So how has that kind of changed things?
I think it's totally fair. I've always stood against somebody. If somebody comes to me and says, we want this, and I'm only paying $100,000, they're putting money before the person, before the company. Understanding there's budgets, respecting there's budgets, right?
Right.
Maybe just how you phrase it. Look, we can only afford to pay this. That's good for the candidate, though. Company may be paying, someone to direct their podcast, and they're going to pay $250,000. And I call you, you're making 100. Guess who wins? You do.
Yeah.
And that's where the recruiter needs to carry that balance. I do not disclose unless my client mandates it what my candidate is making. One, because in a lot of the states you can't do that. But if my candidate is making more than what the company is willing to offer, I'm going to be enough to say, hey, guess what? You're making their top. I don't know if I can beef this up. What do you want to do? We're going to have a conversation, make a decision to walk away or go after it.
Right, right. And then maybe in that case, it's not really a monetary component, but then it goes back to the other things that they can negotiate to say, okay, maybe you can't pay me what I was getting paid at this other organization, but you can provide this.
Yeah.
Whatever that is to help with
that. And it may be your passion. This job is your passion. And I've had candidates do it. Take a $20,000 cut because that was their passion. I had a guy 2 years ago turn down a 6-figure sign-on bonus because the other company that offered him a job put him where he wanted to be. I totally respect that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unusual. And when you see someone at that caliber of personal values and personal dedication to what is important to them, that's great advice. And I think in the new company that you're launching, it's like you can really change the dynamic of the workplace by helping candidates understand their why.
Yep.
What is it? And why do you want it? Right? Sometimes they're just so blind. I want the fancy title. I want a ton of money. Why?
I hear that.
Right? What is it? Why? Why do you want it? So I think that's amazing that you're going to help.
And then I've helped candidates' kids and their spouses over the years, which prompted this. But what really prompted this was someone in my family. They had that mindset. I want. I'm worth this. You got to give me this. And I was sitting there, a family thing, and I said, nobody owes you anything. Oh, they got furious with me. I said, think about it. Nobody owes you anything. Actually, you owe your parents about $80,000, but nobody owes you anything. And I was very brutal with them and hurt their feelings. Okay, get over yourself. Nobody owes you squat. And after about a month, they called me and they say, hey, can we chat? Yeah. And we got into it and they found their self-worth. Mm-hmm. And they worked for me for a year. And then they said, I want to do my own thing. Cool, go.
Right.
Awesome. And they did that. And that led to another thing. And they are totally happy now. And they're like, you know what? Nobody owes me anything.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. It's like you're taking a wall, like having that that someone owes you something is going to prevent you. The wall hurts you, and you're shattering it and saying,
Yeah.
focus on
Yeah.
more.
With these younger people, the world's their playground.
Yeah.
There are so many jobs that are open and opening with so many parameters that if I want to be able to guide that person now, and their restrictions are self-imposed.
Yeah.
I don't want to move. Okay, I get that. I don't want to work nights. Got it. Now you're going down this funnel. You're narrowing it down. Let's work together to do that and also come to some sort of reality. So that's what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Nationwide.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And I see the need. Like when you say, the world is their playground, there really is an endless amount of different types of opportunities. And so I always say, if let's say you're 20 years old and I ask you, like, what do you want? And they spit out a number. Oh, I want to make 6 figures. Okay, well, you can easily do that. You can get a job working in a restaurant or Uber drive. Like you could do 3 or 4 jobs. They might not be the best jobs, but you could easily make 6 figures doing 4 jobs. But again, why do you want to make 6 figures? What do you want to do with your money? What are you going to do with it? It's crazy how the answer to that question is not even coming, like it's not even a consideration. It's like, I want to make 6 figures. Okay, cool. That's easy. Why?
It's materialistic. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What are you going to do if you make it? But so it's great to talk to you. I'm so excited that we got to connect. And what I'll do is in all the show notes, we'll put your, how to contact you, information about the different services that your company provides. People reach out to me all the time and say, hey, I'm looking for a new position. Can you introduce me to so-and-so? And I always say, if there's anybody in my LinkedIn network that I can introduce you to, absolutely. And then same vice versa, will people say, I'm looking for a new director of marketing. Do you know anyone? And so it's a beautiful thing when you can connect them. I'm not doing it at the professional capacity that you're doing it, but I can see how it could be really fulfilling and rewarding to place people and companies together.
It is. And it's not a matter of the deal. It is. I feel we're impacting on people's lives. Mm-hmm. Okay. And one of my proudest moments is one of my clients just recently launched a compound to treat Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. My guys built that. Mm-hmm. How cool is that? My guys built that. And I have people that have been in the same company for 15 years. I put them there. So we're impacting not only on them, we're impacting on their family in a positive manner. We're impacting on the world, hopefully, and to me, that is awesome. And if I can help someone treat a disease, deal with a medical issue by putting the right person in place, I'm there.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. It's definitely a great industry to be in, especially when you think about the very end where you say, hey, this is science and medicine that's going to get to someone who needs it. So it's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for taking the time to talk.
Thank you.
And stay in touch for sure. And we'll keep
I will.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Stay in touch. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you all for joining us. I'm Dr. Sadhna Bokhiria, and this is LeaderVoices. This show is brought to you by the American Express Leadership Academy Alumni Network and leaderstories.org. LeaderVoices is audio engineered by Robbie Ladd and produced by Creepandian team at OTVO Digital. Special thanks to Caitlin Johnson and Michael Chang. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.